And there we go. We're on. I'll do an official opening in a second, but I just want to make sure the stream gets going. I know Drake's already in the room. Also, Mac is in the room. Mac Attack, hi. How are you? How's your day going, Don?
A little bit of insanity, as it is these days. But for the most part, it's been pretty good.
It's funny. Insanity, I was just going to say, insanity can be good.
It can be. It's a fuel for creativity, if nothing else. Yeah.
And let me mute the video because I'm getting our audio twice. So it looks like we are live. We're good to go there. We got some people in the chat. That's nice. We got 11 people in there right now, which I'm absolutely happy with. Okay, you ready to get going?
Let's make some magic here.
Let's do that official type thing. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Behind the Shot. This is Image Critique Show number 7. Hi, as always, welcome to Behind the Shot. This is our critique show series that only happens here on YouTube. Of course, the normal podcast you can subscribe to in a podcast app. By the way, you can subscribe to audio only. You can subscribe to video. It's your choice, assuming that your podcast app supports video. And then, of course, here on YouTube, all the videos go up as well. And we do this critique series with my buddy Don. And before I bring Don on, just a couple things to remind you of. You can subscribe to the Flickr group over on Flickr. It's Behind the Shot. That's where you submit images that make it into this particular critique show. So if you go over to Flickr, you can sign up for the free account or the pro account, either one. Sign up and then join the Behind the Shot group. Submit your images there. Now, if you just submit your images, that's kind of just participating in the photography community, right? You put your images in, people like them, people comment on them, you comment on other people's, that type of thing. But if you get to the point where you are ready and are interested in having your images in the pool of images we choose from, use the Flickr tag btscritique. I see a number of people put it actually in the description. Sometimes I find those, sometimes I don't. But Flickr has a tagging system. So use the Flickr tag btscritique, and that will get you in on that. And that brings us to the co-host of the hour, Don Komarechka. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well enough in these very interesting times, well enough to be sitting down with you and discuss some great images and hopefully feel inspired myself about the whole process, which is one of the reasons why I love to do this.
Yeah, and we've got actually, I pulled extra images in case some of them might be fast today. So I've got 10 or 11. We'll make at least 9 of them like usual, and we'll see what happens there. We've already got some people chiming in the chat. We've got Boris is in there, who we've done a couple of his images before. Rosas is in there. Mac Attack, Drake is in there. And please, since we're just starting this, if you want to, grab the link, put it out on social media, tell people that we're going live right now with this. It would really, really help. Let's get some people in here. Let's have some fun with it. And again, like the video, that always helps. And if you would, subscribe to the YouTube channel. A lot of people don't realize this. Subscribing doesn't let you know every time I do something. Subscribing is kind of almost nothing if you don't click the bell. The algorithm will not tell you everything that I do unless you click the bell, so click the bell as well. So, Don, before we get into the images, I also want to let people know about halfway through we'll take, not a break per se, but we'll stop down a little bit, talk to Don, see what's happening there, and I think it's time to have some fun. So let's go with image number 1. Now, this time around, I chose the images. We alternate. I picked the images this time. Don gets to go first. So, Don, what do you think of the first image, which is called "I'm Going In"?
Well, this is so much fun. And again, a lot of people staying home. I commend that and choosing subjects around the house. So your Star Wars toys, I absolutely love the concept, and I've obviously seen the movies, and I've played the video games, and I've played with the toys. So this is nostalgic to me to some level. So number 1, we've got focus stacking at play, and I can see that there's a couple of missing slices very easily seen on the rug on the ground because you see some breaks in the texture pattern where it gets a little bit soft and fuzzy in almost a predictable cadence. And so too few shots, I believe, were taken in order to extend the focus. And again, you don't need to extend the focus all the way. It's all right if the AT-AT in the background is out of focus. Although if this was a true to life scene, it might be more in focus. And so play your hand at that what you will.
Let me ask you, can I interrupt you? I apologize. How many do you think for a scene like this, how many layers would you have taken?
It all depends on how close you are and what your aperture is set to. A technique that I'm using a lot more frequently right now is if your camera has a high resolution mode, then that will allow you to take an obscenely large image. And some people have uses for that. My use is I can do that and then crop down, throwing like 90% of the image away. By doing so, I'm further away from the subject. I'm further away from the subject, I have more in focus, and I can use far fewer frames for focus stacking, yet still maintain a much greater depth of field on a macro scale. If your camera doesn't have that, and that's not a tool that we can use right now, I don't know how big the toys are, but let's just let's just guess here. I might have taken 60 frames. I might not have used them all, but you always want to shoot a little bit in front of the subject and a little bit beyond the subject, and then cull it down to exactly what you're after there.
Okay. I agree with everything that you just said, and so I'm going to add just a little bit, but it's not going to be a lot. First of all, I love that people are experimenting with toy photography, because if you're going to do that type of macro photography, we got toys laying around, and it's a great subject, especially if you go over the top with it. And I'll give you an example of that coming up in just a second. I like what the maker did on this shot with the depth of field. Or at least I should say I like the idea of the depth of field. But kind of like Don alluded to, the focus of the toy in the back, you could play with that a little bit. I think it's a little too soft for me. The other problem that I'm having with the image actually is the light. Everything's about light, and the light here is just flat. There's no mood, and this would be on a planet somewhere that we don't live, and it kind of needs that mood. Now, that could be the fact that it's clearly carpet, right? So doing something with that could help. It's also clearly the fact that carpet just ends, and then you just have what is effectively a wall. Putting something behind it that gave some mood, would help with that, and getting some dramatic lighting in here would definitely help with that as well. And here's the example I was going to say. And I'm not going to show it. I probably actually should. You know what? I can do this because we have the technology. So let me pull this up really quick, because I think, it's not going to be in there. Let me do this. If you just go to Google and you search for toy photographer, you're going to immediately come up with Michael Wu photography, Michael Wu toy photography. And this guy is one of the best in the world at this. The stuff that he does, let me go to his gallery here really quick, because his work, you'll start to see, is just absolutely amazing. The motorcycle with the cookies and just, you get the idea, right? So go definitely check out Michael Wu toy photography, and that'll give you an idea of where you can kind of stretch this type of photography to. Anything else you wanted to add on this one?
Yeah, well, just the whole concept in general. We know it's not real models of this stuff, and yes, people have used miniatures for Star Trek and Star Wars in actual filming of scenes, and we can tell these are toys. So just embrace the fact that this is done on your carpet. But the planet Hoth is covered in snow. So go and get your pair of scissors and some 8.5 by 11 copy paper, and just start cutting up tiny little squares of the paper and cover that carpet area with that. Maybe waste some of your blue ink and print out a blue sheet to put in the background to emulate the sky or something. It's
blue light even. You can just throw blue light.
And so you can play around with those ideas whenever you're dealing with toy photography, no matter what the subject. And so just have fun with it. And this looks fun. Keep that up and just take it the extra mile.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And by the way, I'm going to do something different today. I will bring up the chat periodically throughout the show as well. Mac Attack said muted and desaturated. The color correction seems very accurate to the films, though. So, that type of a thing. So we'll bring up, and I'll try and mention some of the comments as we go through. So you ready for image number 2?
Take it away.
All right. This one is called Through the Clouds. And I'll take this one first. I love the mood in this. So my dad was a pilot in the Korean War. He flew P-40s. He flew P-51s. And so I grew up around fighter planes, and then he ended up in missiles at one point. I used to go out to Vandenberg Air Force Base a lot, watch missiles take off. But I love what you did in this shot from a composition point of view. The mood is awesome. I'm going to make another recommendation. Our mutual friend, I think Don knows him, Moose Peterson, is also a phenomenal, most people know Moose for his wildlife photography, but he is an amazing aviation photographer. Go look up his work with classic aircraft like this, because I think you've got so much to work with here. I love the framing of the plane on the right. A lot of people would say, no, the plane should be on the left and you should have headroom for it to fly into. Disagree here. The fact that it's coming out of the cloud into more clear sky, really, really nice. You did a great job with the focus to me, actually, at 500 millimeters. The blades are slightly blurred. There's a lot going on here that I love. Here's what I think could improve this shot, take it to the next level. It's missing vibrance, right? These planes had a life to them. And even if, now, again, if you're doing this for documentary purposes, this could be accurate technically. But you need more vibrance and punch to bring that plane to life. The color just feels flat, not the contrast. The contrast to me on the plane isn't horrible. It just needs a pop to get it off the page, as it were. And then the cloud. The cloud is a weird gray. The cloud is a gray almost as though it was slightly clipped and you brought it back too far. And I don't think you needed to. It could just be that was the color. It could be a dusty cloud. Maybe it was low to the ground. I don't know. It's got kind of a weird coloring in the cloud to me. I'm going to be interested to see what Don says about this one.
I kind of like the cloud. It feels a little warmer than maybe that's a white balance
maybe that's
issue.
what it is. It's so warm. And again, it could be he's low. I would say one last thing. I wish the plane was a tad higher.
Well, I wish that, and by the way, I love the shot. I love the fact that it's kind of flying into the edge of the frame, but it's banking, and that's why that works. It's effective. You've got some motion blur in the propellers. I might have experimented having maybe a little bit more, but not so much as it becomes invisible. I like the fact that there is a sense of motion there. If you were shooting this, if I were shooting this, I should say, I would be on the highest speed continuous shooting that my camera would be capable of, because you never know from 1 second to the next how everything is going to align in a different way. One fraction of a second earlier or later, I might have been able to see the pilot's face, but there is a metal beam through the window that is obscuring that at this exact juncture. And while I love the framing and everything else, a very similar framing could have been had with that face being visible. And that's something that we normally don't see in a wider field frame like this, to actually make a visual connection to the pilot themselves. And so I like that we're almost getting that, and I would like to see that progress a bit more. But
I also like, by the way, if you'd gone earlier, I think too much of the plane would have been obscured by the cloud. I can see the right amount of plane. The props to me are in a really good spot. Overall, just really, seriously, really nice work on this particular shot. Next one up is Don's, and this is, and by the way, I should say on that last shot, Boris said wowza, and Drake has commented that Michael Wu's photography makes him want to try toy photography. Next one up is Queen of the Forest.
And so we have a beautiful bird of prey that, the wings flashing forward, and so there's beautiful angles and beautiful light too. You see the light just barely hitting the edges of the wing and creating a dappled lighting effect that I think works really nicely. There are some bright areas that I wish were a little bit darker. They might be able to be taken down, but I understand that that's part of the nature of the subject. I would assume that the eye that's in shadow has been brought up a little bit in post-processing, but not so much that it looks fake. And so I agree with any editing decisions that were done there. There's not a whole lot that I would change in an image like this. The background is nice. The tree on the right side is a little bit distracting, only because it's not a perfect vertical. And in this scenario. Okay, well, sorry, Steve. But what I'm going to suggest is actually not make it straight. Make it deliberately askew, because these birds twist and tumble like aerobatic, displays, sort of like you might see with that plane. And gravity really doesn't have a sense for them like it does for us. So if you were to improve this image in any one way, either make it straight and be normal, or just take a chance and throw it off on like a 30-degree angle, and see what that does for the composition.
Okay. So, oh, man, I should have gone first on this one because I love, first of all, to the maker of this shot, dude, this is awesome, right? You've got everything I want in this type of a shot. Bird's looking at me. Wings are forward, actually. I see so much with the wings out, right? The wings forward, but you've got spread on the end wings, the sharpness, the depth of field choice, everything here, the softness of the background, just really, really nice. Now, the tree on the right-hand side, I actually like that it's there, meaning it puts an end cap on the frame where the bird is flying into. The bird is left, so you've got the right motion, the right balance. The tree kind of balances it out. I wish on the tree, that it was, like Don said, either vertical, which I think would probably be best, or if you were going to do an intentional slant, because this one looks accidental, if you were going to do an intentional slant, I'd have it slant top to the right, because all the motion of this bird, this photo, is going left to right, and the tree leaning against the bird almost feels like a break.
There's tension there.
Let the motion go out of the frame.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
There's tension there, and it doesn't need to be, at least not in that part of the image.
Exactly. The bright spots on the shoulders and the bottom of the bird's left eye, our right frame eye, to me, those could be brought down, and they should be brought down, definitely. In fact, if you were to take this entire image down a third of a stop, I think the colors would pop off of it as well. But very, very nice job. I envy you. Interesting you caught the eye being lightened. I think maybe somebody did dodge that eye. I can see that now, and I think it may be a little bit too far, but how can I say that? Because I didn't notice it until until Don said it. So, all right, that brings us to the next one. Let's go to Entanglement. So, when I was browsing through the images on Flickr, in the Behind the Shot Flickr group, and what I do is I use a filter to filter not only the group, but the tag btscritique. This was one of those images that in a pool of images literally leaped at me, like I'm scanning the rows and said, whoa, what is that, right? This image, I'm not going to lie, I love, love, love this image. And I should also mention that I love this image. I understand your concept. I understand the color transitions, the weaving pattern of the lines that you're getting. However, this could be this to me would be an 85, maybe even a 90 in an image competition. This is awesome. What would hold it back are some of the lines that don't fit. So I don't know if my mouse does come across. So if you look right here on the upper left corner, there's a lighter swath going across. Don won't be able to see this on his screen, but upper left, there's a swath going across.
I know what
that
you're pointing
one
at.
Doesn't need to be there. Bottom right-hand side, there's an almost white line coming across. That completely draws my eye, pulls me out of the mood, pulls me out of that spiral feel I've got. That needs to either be cloned out or colored down. There's a couple of those in each quadrant, actually. Those are the two main ones. Like right to the right of the bright white one, same thing. That line is so dark, let me move my mouse over there, right here. That line as well, I would probably take out. But here's the one thing that jumps at me. This could be my color blindness jumping in. Maybe nobody else may notice this. But in the bottom left quadrant, there's dark coming down, some light coming across, and right at the end of that light, there's a weird color shift. Now, you get that all over the image where colors are intersecting, but this one seems to throw a color cast that also draws my eye. I'd try and tone that color down, but other than that, dude, to whoever made this shot, and it's actually in there, let me zoom in on that.
Yeah, Drake's
this is Drake. He's in the room right now. Dude.
Okay.
I got nothing.
So, I mean, I agree that this is a great image, and that's non-disputable. But I don't agree that this is a great photograph, because this is digital art, and it
True.
spawns from a photograph. So this is a twirl effect, which is basically a Photoshop action that runs through a whole bunch of automated processes that you do have control over. In fact, Drake has superimposed at least 2 of them using blending modes to create this. And
Okay,
to
how
me,
confident are you that you know how this was created?
100%. I can bring
Okay.
up the Photoshop actions to do this. And
Okay.
basically, you take an image that is just a source of color, basically, and you then run it through the algorithm that creates the resulting twirl effect. And so the image is a source input, and the algorithm generates the artwork. And so the artist doesn't necessarily have as much control over the end output. Uh, it reminds me, there was a video game that I had for my Game Boy back in the 90s. And it was like this Japanese battle system. And what you did in order to prep it is you would have a barcode scanner. And you would scan a barcode, and that would be your game, like your fight against somebody else's barcode. And then it did some algorithmic stuff, and you won or lost based on how the numbers all shook out.
Right.
And so it was much of by chance and not by skill. And so, while this is very beautiful, I'm not going to debate that, the amount of skill required to create it is very, very minimal. And I'm kind of 2 minds. Does that devalue the artwork? I mean, if you look
Not to me at all.
So you look at the famous painter Johannes Vermeer. If you haven't watched the documentary film Tim's Vermeer, go and watch it, because Vermeer still heralded today in museums and in Buckingham Palace and in so many other locations. And he was basically a human photocopier. Does that devalue his work? I don't think so. And so I have to be of the mind of this here. I know I'm talking long on this, but I want to talk a bit about, you mentioned in like a photo competition. I had some of my best work submitted to PPOC, the Professional Photographers of Canada National Image Salon. And one of my best images of that year, wildly heralded, sold lots of prints, licensed it commercially. It got a not accepted rating, where twirls like this received excellence ratings, which is the highest value that you can provide to an image. And that made me bitter, because I know that the amount of skill required to make a beautiful photo, or image in this case, is not there compared to other things. Still, you can't argue with the results. It pulls you in, and that's its purpose. And so that's what we have.
Well, and that's my argument, really, is I totally agree with everything you said, but art can be looked at from 2 ways. Art can be the creator's craft, which is the skill that's involved, and art can be what the audience wants to see, right? So street photography is popular. Great street photography is amazing. But in some cases, some of the best street photos were clearly somebody click, done, right?
And some of them were staged, where we don't know until decades later, maybe even after the photographer has died, that the image was staged. Whether it be famous kiss or famous death photos, there's so many reasons to double think this stuff, but you can get into analysis paralysis at that point.
Exactly.
Do you like it? Yeah, and if the answer is yes, then hurrah, so long as it's not changing the truth.
Right. And let me pull this up really quick, the chat, because Drake, who made the image, is in there, and he said Don is pretty much right. He used mesotint, radial blur, which is the spin, and distort, which is the twirl. But again, to me, dude, I love this. I would print this on metal and hang it on my wall. So you're up on the next one, which is Darkcell.
I'm out of my comfort zone, because this is exactly your expertise here. So I don't know what I'm talking about, but I like this image. It has a certain sense of the character is coming across. And I mean, I don't know who the musician is in this particular case, so I don't have any reference to that. But combination of the makeup, the way the microphone is being gripped, the way the other hand is coming forward, the eyes being obscured by the hair, there's a character here that is being expressed quite well. Yes, we're not seeing a catchlight in the eyes, but this kind of character doesn't need that. There is a small distraction on the left side. Maybe it's another band member, and there's a light right behind the hair that kind of pulls me away. That even if that was just desaturated from its blue to a white, I think the image would be better for it. The only point of contention beyond that I have with this image is the exact cropping of this. You've got part of the thumb cut off. Cut it off more deliberately or give a little bit more space. And the same thing for the top of the hair. Just adjust that framing as you will slightly, and I think it comes across well. One final thing, Steve, that I'm only picking up now that I'm looking at this, is you can see the grill marks on his thumb because he was gripping the microphone so hard. And just apply like a clarity or texture slider locally on that so it becomes more apparent right away. I'm sorry I stole your thunder.
I love that you stole my thunder, because you started by saying this isn't, your comfort zone and it's my world, but you picked up on 90% of what I was going to say. First of all, this is, for the maker of this shot, this is a very, very nice music shot. Because with what I shoot and what this guy shoots, it's all about the moment, right? Basically, we're a combination of photojournalism, portraiture, event photography, action photography, low light photography. And you managed, in all of that that's happening on a stage with all of the distractions and all of the intruders into a frame, you managed to get the moment. And here's the other thing. I see so many music shots like this with the mic up to the mouth, and I can't see enough of the mouth or the nose, and it's nose mic. In this particular case, you happen to choose or get the frame where I can actually see part of the mouth, which matters. I can see both eyes, and I can see part of the nose. I can assemble the full face from what you've shown me, and that's absolutely key. I can see the imprint on the thumb. Don already said that. That's one of my favorite parts of the shot, so he's right. Here's the things. And by the way, what he said on the crop with the thumb, I need to see the whole thumb. Cropping that thumb in the mid would be a little weird, because then you're going to get just a couple of fingers. Really, I wish I could see the whole thumb here, but okay, whatever. I don't mind the head cut off, by the way. The lights on the right, the one over his shoulder, you got to do something with that. You got to burn it down. You got to color it. You got to do something. But photojournalism, you may not be able to. The body on the right, you can easily crop out. That definitely needs to go. That is definitely a distraction. But my thing with this image is, and understanding Darkcell, their lighting is all these weird kind of oranges and reds and blues, and it's very, as the name would suggest. This may be accurate. I just don't think it is. His face makeup is white makeup. And even under a blue light, I can tell that it's white makeup. This looks like it was, so either go with the color that was on his face or color correct it well. This feels in between to me. Not saying it wasn't this way to your eye, but I would white balance this differently because his whole face seems too cool to me. So I would fix that. Maybe I would burn down his arm that's exposed. It's much brighter than his face. And the white on his t-shirt as well, I would burn down, much brighter than his face. But other than that, yeah, nice job on this one. And that brings us up. Let's really quick before we go anymore, because we're 5 shots in. Boris, by the way, said he needs to try what Drake did in the chat. I agree. Fun, yeah. So do I. So how are you? What have you been doing before we continue?
I have been entertaining my almost 4-year-old daughter, which is a daily routine that I'm much loving right now. And it's kind of the silver lining of this whole pandemic for me, because I wouldn't normally have been spending that much time with her. I would have missed a lot of things, because she would be at daycare and I would be, productive. But the changing rules here, I'm trying to embrace as much as I can. Been working on the garden as a level of sanity in different times, and taking some photographs with a camera lens that I have the privilege of announcing tomorrow on a webinar with Venus Optics. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
What time and where?
I will be making a post on my social media accounts as soon as we're done this. So just check me out anywhere on Facebook or Instagram, and just in general, just go to my website, doncom.ca, and you'll find the links to all of those platforms. And I mean, I don't want to spill the beans on it right now, but I'm excited. And, you know, it's fun to have creative options, and this lens gives you a plentiful amount of them while sitting at home.
Sounds good. I threw your lower thirds up at the same time as well, so that they saw some of those. So let's jump back into it. By the way, you're still working on the book. Obviously, people know. Go to Kickstarter. You can see his latest update on the book as well.
Yeah, and there have been a few, you know, curmudgeonly responses to my delays, and all I have to say to those people is, if you don't like the project that you supported, you didn't buy a book, you supported a Kickstarter, and it will come. The money is sitting in the bank waiting for the press to completely reopen so that I can get there, and I am trying to do 1 page a day in order to complete this project. But knowing that if you've backed it, if you've supported this project, that you can get more than half of it in your hands right now, just send me an email. I'll send you the PDF, and it'll keep you busy, and you will have everything that you need to be confident about the project. So there you go.
And by the way, he sent me a PDF of it, and the detail in the book kind of caught me off guard. I'm not going to lie, because the detail in the photos, I don't mean detail like they're detailed photos. I mean, what is included in photos and charts and descriptions, it's going to be pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to it. So let's jump back into it.
Well, no, hold on, Steve. Before we get into it, I talked about myself. You got to give me 30 seconds of you, man.
Okay. So for me, a couple of different things. Doing this once a month. Usually I always do it on a Thursday in between my normal Behind the Shot releases. So that's why it fell on the 14th this month instead of earlier. And then not only doing this, but doing the normal shows, the normal Behind the Shot shows. I've got one coming up at the end of the month with Canon Explorers of Light, Bob Davis of Bob and Don Davis. Really excited for that one. Finally scheduled Lindsay Adler, so that's going to be a really, really big one. And working on getting the San Francisco 49ers photographer on, also Canon Explorers of Light, these last two, Terrell Lloyd. And if you don't follow him on Instagram, you definitely should, because his work is just amazing. So that's happening. And then I've just started doing something with a friend of mine by the name of Adam L. Macias. Adam is a very well-known tour photographer, live music tour photographer. And he created something, you know what? Everybody in this chat right now would be interested in this, really. And that is, he created something called the Raw Editing Challenge. And you can go to raweditingchallenge.com. Every Monday, he gets a tour photographer or a music photographer friend of his to release a raw image, which is not easy to do. A lot of people won't release their raws. Release a raw image. You've got a full week to edit it the way you think it should be edited. And then on Sundays at 5 o'clock, we go live on Adam's Twitch channel, and we interview the photographer. We do a small kind of version of Behind the Shot where I talk to the photographer about the shot. And then the photographer that supplied the raw image edits it live before we go through some of the submissions that we're on. And Boris, by the way, just said, Terrell, I can't wait to see that show. Yeah, same with me too. So again, raweditingchallenge.com. It's a lot of fun, and Adam's getting amazing photographers on it. So there we go. That's pretty much it.
All right. Take it away for the next photo.
Jump back into it. The next shot, this is called The Call. And there's a lot to like in this image because the minimalistic feel, and here's the thing, I tend to like minimalistic images, right? Even in my live music photography, I tend to, in the camera, frame things without a lot of intrusions and conflicts and negative energy compared to the positive energy that's happening in a shot. Negative energy is the wrong phrase, but opposite energy is a better way to word it. This shot has all of that. There's one thing about this that I can't get over. The photographer, they just lined themselves up dead center. I get that, right? You went for symmetry. And you almost got it, by the way. It's not truly symmetrical. Like the stairs on the right hit higher on the corner than the stairs on the left. There's more space in front of the handrail on the bottom right. Those little types of things, I'll let you go with that. But by positioning yourself here at the right time, you managed to get an airport. I suppose it could be a train station, but I'm guessing it's an airport.
So this, by the way, is the TWA Hotel at JFK.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I know that because I know the photographer.
Okay, good. So this is going to be interesting then to see if you agree with what I say. The fact that you got this with one person with the bags on the phone facing a direction where the phone and arm weren't blocking the face, it's almost like you posed this. And if you did, I don't necessarily want to know, right? But the position of the guy is literally spot on. He's in between the edge of the door and the bench, dead center. He's dead centered under the square window that's above him. So if you raised him up, he would be in the middle of it like a frame. It's fascinating that there's one person, but you manage to have detail in a million cars outside, right? That I also absolutely love. So things I would fix in this, or fix is the wrong word because I like the image, but change in this. Again, make sure it's truly symmetrical. Little teeny things can be a big, big difference. The bench needs to be burnt down, not under the bench, but the top of the bench needs to be burnt down as part of the sign area needs to be burnt down. Same with above the sign, there's a reflection on the wall, but behind the window, I'd bring that down a little bit. And the top part of the roof with the lights, you don't need the lights at all, and you don't need that clipped part at all. Crop it down to me, or clone it out, either one. But to me, you don't need it. And other than that, really, really nicely done story. The fact that there's so many cars and one guy really is interesting to me.
I think that the negative space provided by the floor being so empty, I think it needs a partner in the ceiling. And it's a nice kind of balance because it's there. And so I wouldn't necessarily recommend cropping it like you did, although I understand the reasoning behind that.
So let me go farther then. If you're going to leave it, include all the lights. I don't like how close the top two fixtures are to the edge then.
I would agree with that. And you can use the warp tool. It's almost impossible to frame something perfectly symmetrically, no matter how hard you try. And no matter how you crop or rotate, you might not be able to get there. But some just subtle movements with the warp tool or the liquefy tool with architecture can just nudge things. We won't notice them mid-frame, but we notice them when they hit the edges. So just make sure that those edges line up as best as you can. And in Photoshop, you can bring down a ruler and just see exactly where those lines are and use the warp or liquefy tool to
bring in a grid, whatever.
Exactly. So, I mean, you were spot on about the comment that it was just the single, traveler. And I mean, it's weird because it sort of embodies what we are doing right now. Like we're not traveling. We are not out in the world, going from country to country or state to state unless we absolutely need to. Yet you still have the full parking lot full of cars. So I can assume that this would have been taken prior to the pandemic. But to have just the singular person there makes it all that more special because you know that it was a hard moment to get, unless you had to edit some things out. And I don't know if that was the case. I can look around the floor, and if you pay attention to the guy's shadows and how his shadows are, and the shadows of the other structures and things, it's impossible to tell if there was something else that was cloned out. But there is deviations in the floor that don't show people, but show like rectangles of slightly darker colors. There might have been things there that the shadows might slightly remain.
There might have been people.
There might have been that have been removed. And if they were removed, I can't tell that by looking at it. So power to you. And if there were no people or other obstructions within the frame, then power to you as well, because you would have had to have taken this image at like 3 a.m. Now it does say like 7 something on the clock. So that would probably be a busy time. So either luck of the draw or skills in editing. It turned out well.
There's one thing, as you mentioned the floor, I do want to add before I bring up the next shot, and that is the bottom right and bottom left corners. I'm not talking a vignette. Don't go heavy. but the bottom corners in a ways, not even the top, just the bottom, you could burn those down to bring that focus a little more in towards that center of the image. I think that would be handy, but again, overall, there are some really good shots today. You take this one. This one is called Railroad Hobby Show.
And, I always wanted to have a little miniature rail set. I complained for many years to get a Lego one when I was young, and it never arrived. So I look at this like a missed opportunity
of my childhood. Now I feel bad for you.
I did get a Lego airplane set, which I absolutely loved. So, hey, I got one.
You're good.
I'm good. But looking at this, you've got mix of old and new and toys and fun. I love the fact that there is a minion from Despicable Me in this set. I mean, it's so classic and old school and designed to be around like the 1950s or so, maybe 67. I'm not sure, before my time anyhow. And then right in the middle of it, you have a minion, and it makes me smile. It makes me happy to see that. What could make an image like this better? Well, you know that it is a small image, and so you have a shallow depth of field, and that's more expected here because you know it's a model train. Now, I've got people in the background. Could I have framed this in a way that I did not have those people? Or if I could say, and just using the element of just personal interaction, say, hey guys, could you stand by the side for just a second when I take this picture? And so the people in the background kind of pull me out of this space, and I want to stay in this space. Yes, you could crop it, but I like the framing. I wouldn't necessarily change that. I would also like the potential.
So you're saying you don't think these are toys?
I'm saying that these are toys. I'm saying that there are 3 people in the background that are large, out of focus blobs of color, mostly wearing red shirts in the background. So yes, these are toys, obviously. But it's the people in that in the out of focus background that are distracting in order to kind of keep me in the element of this being a playset.
Agreed.
But motion is the one thing that I think could be improved. I'm going to assume that train is moving, or that it can move. And so what I would do then is have the camera on a tripod, or be just really stable. Image stabilizers are great these days. Set my flash to a second curtain flash, have it diffused over the set, and have, it depends on how fast the train is moving, but let's say a half a second exposure. And during that, the flash fires at the end of that exposure. What would happen is, well, the people would be static, obviously. The train would have a motion blur, but then pop into perfect clarity when the flash fires at the end of the exposure, which gives it a sense of motion moving back without it being obscured in the process. What say you, Steve?
It's interesting the way you framed it, but I was going to say something similar lighting-wise. So I'm going to start with this. The tilt shift effect makes real world look like toys when used in a certain way. And getting the tilt shift effect, which is an off angle, heavy blur in the back, heavy blur in the front, down shooting type method, using a tilt shift type effect with toys that are already toys, I really like, right? I like the composition here. You've got the train coming in from the upper right rule of third, coming down to the lower right rule of third. Just some really neat stuff that you did with composition. Here's the thing, though, and why I thought your flash idea was interesting with the second curtain. What that would add to me is not just the motion that you're looking for. It would add the textured lighting that I'm looking for. So again, I mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to say it again here. The lighting is flat. There's no life to this lighting whatsoever. It's bright. It's just there. There's no sculpting going on. Using a flash the right way with some motion would add the drama of shadow. And there's no shadow here. There are shadows, but there are no shadows here being used in a way to make the story more interesting to me. So you could probably, there's nothing really clipped. You could probably just drop this a half a stop, maybe even a stop, and immediately get more interest out of it, and then dodge and burn to bring back or bring down more. Like, for example, the wood between the tracks, that needs to go down. The grass, that needs to go down. I love the car on top of the roof, just like the Minion. I mean, again, really, really cool stuff. I would argue, and you know, the balcony people, there's a lot going on here. I like just tweaking, really. So again, go look up Michael Wu. It's michaelwutoyphotography.com, and you'll get a lot of really cool ideas. Anything else on this one?
I'm good to move on to the next one, which I'm curious to hear your opinions on.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you knew the one photographer earlier, and I happen to know this photographer. And because this mountain is Mount Rubidoux, it's in my town. I don't know if Scott Heath is still in the chat, but Scott Heath and I walked up this hill with a guy by the name of Jefferson Graham. Now, Jefferson Graham is one of the tech columnists for USA Today, and he does, let me give him a plug, because he does some really cool stuff on YouTube. He does an entire YouTube channel on photo walks. He goes to different cities. He finds somebody in that city to give him a tour of that city that they live in. And he came to my hometown, and we did one of his photo walk episodes here in Riverside, and we ended it hiking up this mountain, Mount Rubidoux. And Horacio, who shot this, super nice guy and an amazing photojournalistic photographer. And I like your concept here. I like the fact that you did the multiple long exposures. I like that you got the star trails. I like that you did, a composite image here. The problem I'm having is a couple of things. One, if you're going to use multiple exposures and combine them, they got to be the right exposures. There's no reason, if you're going to take the time to do multiple exposures on long exposure photography, that those lights in the background couldn't be properly exposed. They don't need to be blown out. Same with some of the lights on the hill. It's just wrong in that sense. I don't mind that the mountain is dead center. I kind of wish that there was a little more to the right so that the cross wasn't so close to dead center, if that makes any sense to you. And the other thing is, my eye would see this as a much deeper depth of field. And I think a more true depth of field to my eye would help tell this story. So if you're going to combine multiple shots, I think you also should combine multiple depths to get me more depth out of what you're shooting. And last but not least, I'm not saying that you did clone. I think it's just shadows from people walking by. But there's a pattern at the bottom that looks like clone tracks. And that's the worst thing. If you do clone and I see your Photoshop work, failure right there, right? If I see clone tracks, you've messed up.
And even if it's not
just as bad if you didn't clone and I see it. Say again?
Even if it's not cloning tracks, if it looks like it, it's as distracting as it.
Exactly. Go for it. What do you got?
Well, first of all, the framing I love. I wouldn't have changed the framing in any way on a shot like this. I just think that it works. It's functional. You have enough sky space, even though the horizon is roughly in the center. There's enough that breaks it to kind of deviate that. And
it's, while it's not a mirror, it's unusual enough to support the center.
Exactly. Now it's interesting because you see some of the light trails from, I'm guessing, a phone or a flashlight or something at the.
I think they're flashlights.
Yeah, right at the bottom center of the frame, and there's some short ones, and then there's like a really really long one, and that's fine. I just there's no rhyme or reason to it. Maybe there could be. The stars in the sky, the amount of time that it takes the stars to move that distance is much greater than the length of any of the other frames that include people. And so there is some level of compositing done beyond just the static people shots, because the sky might have been realistic to this exact location. I'm not saying that that's not true, but it was a much longer exposure. And if that's the case, you might then have the ability to take some of the image information from that frame and using a layer mask, paste it over all of the multitudes of feet that we see on the bottom that you were complaining look like cloning artifacts. And in doing so, then just clean up the shot a little bit. I think that this is a classic example of you always take far more shots than you think you need, because you never know in post-processing how you're going to put them together. And the art and the skill of getting the shots and properly exposing things as best as you can in a scenario like this was done in camera. I think it's very evident of that. The next step is just making sure that in post-processing that all of those different puzzle pieces fit together properly.
Yeah, and overall, though, I love the shot. Wish I did this, but there's definitely things that could take it to the next level. Next image, you go first. This one is called Moose Silhouette in Gold, and I'm excited to hear your idea on this shot.
Aptly named, because that's exactly what this is for the most part. The moose, I like the fact that it's not completely in silhouette. Like, you've got some detail in the ears. You've got sort of a hairline light along the top, which echoes very beautifully with all of the water just coming off of the bottom of his face and his neck and everything down there. So that all works out beautifully. The background is soft, non-distracting. The fact that it's only on half the frame, lending into that negative space, tends to work very nicely for me. But one of the more beautiful elements in this frame is the bokeh in the foreground, where you have the specular highlights on the water that, from the sun, I'm assuming, that get pushed out of focus. They take on the shape of the aperture, and they're a little bit brighter on the outside than on the inside. That kind of has a bit of the soap bubble bokeh effect, which is more common for more antiquated lenses, even though this was shot with the Canon 500 millimeter f4.5 L USM, which is a lens that I'm not familiar with. I've used, I believe, the 5.6 version, but I didn't know they made a 4.5. So that's kind of interesting. And every lens has their own characteristics for an image. And so if I was to be shooting this at f6.3, it's not going to give me a whole lot of meaningful depth. But if I was shooting it wide open, then I would be able to get rid of some of the slight geometric feel that's created by the aperture blades in the bokeh. Because you can tell that there's probably like a 9-blade aperture in there. There's some slight bends to it in certain areas. If you shoot wide open, then it would become perfectly circular, and that might help the image and improve the quality there. Because your depth of field only has to cover the moose, and you can give up a stop and still get that.
Yeah, and I'm not going to echo everything that you said because you've already said it, and I agree with everything that you said. Couple of things. First of all, let me just say out loud, I love this shot. I love darn near everything about it. The shallow depth of field, the color, the light quality, the light angle is really nice. The soft background, the water dripping is a wonderful touch, and the fact that it is actually moving in front of the mouth, meaning he swung his head up, and you can tell the story of that. The fact Don mentioned it's not complete silhouette, the fact that I can see the shape of the eye matters to me, right? It's not a drawing, it's a real 3D moose to me. I love that. There's not much I would even correct. The one thing I would say, and by the way, the warm colors in front, the warm colors behind, but on the plane of the moose, that warmth goes away where the depth of field is in focus. Awesome. The moose is not enough in the frame, though. And I'm not saying he needs to intrude more into the scene. I'm saying all I'm getting is a shoulder, and I want more than the shoulder. I kind of want mid-bodice area. I want a little more establishment of his body, his length, as it were. I just think would really increase the impact of the animal in this shot.
Yeah, well, and there's no antlers,
the next
so
one.
let's call it a female.
Yes,
I want to push back just one quick second on that, Steve. If I had a little bit less of the body and less negative space, almost making a square frame, that would work for me as well.
Interesting. I like that. Let me throw in that Larry said it's a very old lens, because you had said you hadn't heard of the lens. Boris said, I miss moose. Can't wait until they come out of quarantine. And then Larry also said, wow, a lot of things I never knew about in everything you just described. Yeah, just really honestly a great shot. Let's jump to the next one. We're almost done. I'm just going to go through them, even though I have more than we needed, because this one I want to know what you have to say on it. I'm going to be very, very brief on this one. It's creative as heck. By the way, this is called Sunset in the Garden. This is creative. It's impressionist-like. It's watercolor-like. It's double exposure-like. It's also moving the camera during exposure-like. There's a lot of different things that go into making this kind of wild but surrealistic type image. The color palette is extremely comfortable to me. And creativity-wise, I like what you did pushing the envelope from the norm. However, there's two main things that I'll just say. There's streaks that are bright going across the dark trees at the top. And those are actually distracting to me. I think you could take those out. It's not going to be easy, but I think you could, because having that solid greenish up there to contrast the orangey on the bottom, I think is nice. And the white streaks draw away from that. They could just be clouds. I don't know, but either way, it doesn't matter. And same thing in the sky in the upper left. There's one lone cloud that with your processing turned really dark, and it doesn't fit the relaxing scene. That's all I got.
I love that this has a very film feel to it, like expired colored film that has been scanned and not color corrected kind of thing. And a lot of the effects that are employed here are things that you could have done in the film era, even though this was shot with a D7100, I think.
And by the way, Ozzy Osborne is in the chat, and this is their shot.
Lovely. Well, thanks for
Ozzy watching. As in Auzy. It's not Ozzy Osborne.
Yes. Thank you for being here, you rock legend, you. I'm surprised he is even capable of conscious thought these days. Anyway, that's a different Ozzy.
Different Ozzy.
In an image like this, I think to myself, how would I have shot it? I mean, I'm obviously trying to critique it. So what would I have been doing in the moment? And I probably would have come up with something very similar, maybe even something less artistic than this, because I don't usually shoot in this area. So that's a big compliment. But to me, if I think just photographically, outside of the style elements of it, it's missing an actor. It's missing a primary subject. I love the stage that has been set. Where is the actor coming out of stage left, and so in that regard, I think, okay, well, could you have somebody in an antiquated looking white dress looking forlornly into the distance? I don't know what kind of, like, you could throw a dog into the image, or
in front of the gazebo.
Yeah, anything like that could be an element that really notches this up to an award-winning kind of image. To get it this far means you have all of the technical expertise to combine these things together and hone them over time. Like you mentioned a few things about the cloud and what have you. There's always some extra polish that an image can take. But to create something like this is one thing. To make it into a story is the next step. And I think that that's what needs to be done with this kind of an image for it really to gravitate towards people that just can't stop looking around all of the details and coming back again to that actor.
Well, and I'll add, this was one of those shots, because we were talking earlier about process versus audience reaction. And this is one of those shots that, while I love the process, my original thought when I saw this, and part of the reason I brought it into the critique today, is because I didn't necessarily, as a viewer, click and get it and relate to it. And then the more I looked at it, I kind of want to see this on canvas or something. It's just really, really neat. Let's jump to the last image, and we'll hit that one really quick. And this one is called Alaskan Brown Bear Stare.
It's too close to the bear. I mean, as a photographer, if I was standing in that person's shoes, I'd be a little bit terrified. I know the bears have other things on their mind, and people get relatively close to them, especially when they're hunting salmon and all that. But the texture and the sharpness in the fur versus the nice soft background is very nicely done. I often see people over sharpen the front details and eyes and fur or feathers in certain images, and it's easy to spot that. This, if it has been sharpened, has been done so expertly, and it just looks really good, really natural as a result. The bear looking right at you. Again, it kind of instills me with a little bit of that fear. The framing is tight. It's like I have nowhere to go. It's a majestic creature, but it defines the power of the creature by doing that. And I think that works out really nicely. What could I have done? Well, I mean, Steve, you've commented before that the lighting is flat, and that's just the time of the day or the weather overhead. And is there a way you
Yep.
could have improved that? Well, I mean, you're kind of stuck with what you got. You're not going to move out some studio strobes to help frame this bear. So there are people that
I'm just going to say this out loud. I would have held a diffuser up on one side and put some strobes on the other.
Okay. Oh, well, that's you, Steve. You can run faster than I can, apparently.
Yes.
But that being said, people look for a better image than this by going out every single day for a year to that location in order to get the best lighting and everything else. That's not what we all have the luxury of doing. So if you don't have that ability, then this would have been the best that I would have gotten on that day as well. So in post, I would have just done some basic border patrol and cleanup. There's what looks like some white marks, could be bird poo on the moss. I have no idea what that is. It's a distraction in the bottom, the bottom left, and some specks in the fur on the back. It's like if you take a portrait of a beautiful person that has a pimple that's temporary, I've got no problem editing that out. If it's a permanent feature, leave it. But if it's just a little speck of dust that came out on his back, just go ahead and clean that up a little bit. And I don't think that ruins the natural moment that was captured here.
No, and I agree. First of all, nice capture. It's the timing, really. Again, it's the moment and the timing. Just really, really nice angle, looking right down the barrel of the lens. Love that. I'm going to echo what Don said. The stuff on the back, though, I'm going to kind of purpose a different way, and that is, when you're looking at removing something, it's always, to me, based on journalistic integrity. If you are trying to document something for whatever reason in its reality, that's one thing. If you're trying to take a picture as a piece of art, then those speckles of dust or dirt or leaves or whatever on the bear's back, they are very distracting. Take them out. The white water at the bottom, the poo at the bottom, yeah, take those out. Same in the back right too. Mid right, actually, there's a hot spot. My thing with this is one of those shots that could really actually use a vignette that's centered around the bear. There's no reason to have any of the foliage on the left-hand side, the moss on the bottom left, the water on the bottom right, or the trees on the upper right. There's no reason to have those flat lighting. This is where sculpting comes in. Yes, the image light is flat. I actually don't mind it here. I see catch lights in the eyes. That's great. Now, let me say, the eyes are not tack sharp. The exact plane of focus is more towards the ears. And the top of the head, super sharp hair. The eyes are soft. Maybe the bear's got cataracts.
I don't know, Steve. The nose is as sharp as the ears, and the eyes would be right in between them. So maybe
it's just the natural look of their eye then. That could be it. But overall, the one thing that I don't think serves the purpose. Don made the comment, the tight framing means you can't go anywhere. Agree with that. I still think it's too tight. I need some room above the back. I need room below the feet. Left and right, I'm okay. I'm not asking a lot. Just a little teeny bit of room for this giant animal to exist in, I think would be really, really handy.
Here's one further comment is a lot of people don't usually use for this type of shot a polarizing filter, but if you had one on your camera, it would cut through reflections off of anything that's not metallic. What that would do is it's not just the water. Yes, it would bring that down a little bit. I kind of like the way the water looks, but if it's a little bit less, that's fine. What it would do to the background, as you were saying, Steve, to kind of do an in-camera vignette idea, is it would take reflections off of the green foliage in the background, which in turn would darken them down, make those colors richer, and help create a little bit of extra subject isolation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, great idea. Let me bring up the chat really quick before we finish, just to catch a couple of the last things that were in here. Larry said, awesome bear capture, must have been stabilized to get the shot because his knees would have been knocking. Drake wants to see me hold the diffuser while Don is running from the bear. That's a video right there. Hard to get wet fur this crisp. Interesting. I never thought about that. But yeah, good point. And then I've never even seen a bear, is what Jane said. So there we go. That's going to do it for this time around. Don, where can people find you?
doncom.ca, donkom.ca. You'll find everything that I do there, linked to a portfolio of my work that is sorely of need of updating, but priorities are completing my book and working on a few other video projects, as well as announcing a new lens tomorrow. So hit up me on social media and see what I have been up to. And there will be a series of new images coming out with that yet unnamed lens as I have the ability to do it. So stay in touch, everyone.
Awesome. Appreciate, as always, you being here. So that you know, folks, Photo Geek Weekly, which is Don's podcast, that comes out weekly, usually towards the end of the week. We're going to be recording this week's right after we're done with this live stream. So watch for that. And if you're not subscribed to Don, it's DonCom on Instagram, DonCom on Twitter. You can subscribe to him on Facebook as well, Don Komarechka Photography. And that way you'll know when Photo Geek Weekly comes out. And subscribe to Photo Geek Weekly and do the same thing I always ask you to do for Behind the Shot. If you would go to iTunes, leave a ranking, leave an actual written review and a star rating. It really, really helps. I just found out, I hadn't looked in a while, but the guys from He Shoots, He Draws, Dave Clayton and Glenn Dewis, had posted that their podcast did really well on the Apple charts in Great Britain. I thought, I haven't looked at mine in a while. I hit number 30, was it 36, I think, in Japan. And as I started looking, I was number 10 in Great Britain back in April and 24 in France. So that was really cool. So to everybody that watches, I really, really appreciate that. Anything you want to leave us with, Don?
I don't know. I'll just talk in a British accent from now on, and my ratings will go up.
Oh, that will do it. I'm not even going to. To everybody, as always, thanks for watching Behind the Shot. We do these critique shows here on the YouTube channel only. The normal podcast you can get in your podcast app. Behind the Shot, it's available in audio only. It's just Behind the Shot, or Behind the Shot-video if you want the video feed and if your podcast app supports video. But here on the YouTube channel, once a month, we do the critique shows. Please subscribe. Please hit the like button. It would really be appreciated. Please tell your friends about this. That makes everything easier, because sometimes when I post things, I'm only posting to people who follow me anyway. It's kind of like preaching to the choir at that point in time. So to everybody, thanks. This is Behind the Shot, the show where we try and get inside the mind of great photographers by taking a closer look behind one of their shots. We'll see you on the next show.